Welcome to the Cult of Pedagogy podcast. Cult of Pedagogy is a website devoted to building a community of people who are obsessed with all things education. Please visit www.cultofpedagogy.com to find great articles, teacher forums, books and product reviews, and other podcasts. If you're a teacher nerd, you'll find a home at Cult of Pedagogy. This is Jennifer Gonzalez welcoming you to episode 2, where we interview Carrie, a former elementary school teacher who recently left teaching to attend dental hygiene school. I thought this interview was really interesting because Carrie represents the statistic that we hear all the time, which is that over half of teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years. And I believe she might have left at about the 5.5, 6 year mark. But Carrie is a statistic, and being able to talk with her and really dig into the reasons that sort of led to her leaving, I thought was really interesting. This episode would be helpful to people who are considering going into teaching to help them figure out if it's going to be a good match with their personality. Also, I got a lot of insights that I think would be useful for administrators because Carrie really points to the importance of the social environment at a school among the faculty and even with the principal. And she really points out how one of her best experiences as a teacher was in a school where the principal made a real effort to bring the faculty together as a family and provide social opportunities for them. And I think that comfort is really important for new teachers. One of the things that Carrie talked about after we stopped recording was how what she said was that most of the teachers she worked with, when they talked about teaching, they said if they had the opportunity to do it again, they wouldn't, and they would advise most people not to go into the field. And that I thought that was pretty telling, that she did eventually end up leaving. And for those of you who listen to this and are interested in the idea of making early experiences for teachers good ones, I found that interesting, and it sort of reminded me of a post that I had put on the website not too long ago called Find Your Marigold, and it really is about the importance of being surrounded by positive people. It makes me think that maybe if Carrie's first year or two of teaching, if she had been working beside people who really loved their jobs and had a lot of energy that they put into it, then her path may have been completely different. So with that said, I will go ahead and let you get started. Welcome to episode 2. So I'm here with Carrie, and Carrie was an elementary school teacher, and she has recently decided to leave the profession and pursue another career. And so tell me about what grade levels you taught and for how long and that whole path.
Okay, I graduated in December, so for half a semester I taught Title I reading to primary grades. Then I was an aide for a year with first and second grade. Then I taught fifth grade. Then I left that school system, and the last 3 years I taught third grade, then second grade, and second grade at the same school. The last 3 years were at the same school.
So when you say second grade and second grade, was that the same classroom those 2 years in a row?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the only 2 year stretch.
2 years that I had consistency. Yeah.
Okay. And when, as of like right now when we're talking, when did you actually leave that last second grade position?
I've been out of the classroom for a year.
A year now. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you are going into what field now?
Dental hygiene.
Okay. And so we're going to just sort of go all the way back to the beginning. Well, you can tell me when was it when you first thought you would like to be a teacher? I mean, how was it when you were a kid or?
I would say probably it did start then. I can remember playing school growing up all the time. Loved it. I'd come home from school and I'd play school. Mm-hmm. And did that all growing up. And then, you kind of get pushed in a certain direction, I think, when you're leaving high school and entering college. And I started college with I had declared my major as nursing, but my freshman year I changed that to education. And part of that, I would say, was my boyfriend, who I'm married to at the time, or I'm married to now. He was also going into education, and I started thinking about it, and I was like, why? That sounds more like me than nursing. I think I'd rather do that. And of course, I'm thinking the hours of a teacher, summers off, working with kids, that's what I want to do.
And the two of you would have the same
And we'd have the same schedule. Right.
So there were no doubts at that point. It all seemed good. Okay.
Yeah.
And so at that point, what did you think the job was going to be like? Like what got you excited about it?
In my head, I'm envisioning, setting up my classroom and having this, just a fun environment and, working with kids all day long, and I guess not knowing that I was going to be so what's the word? Not that there was going to be structure to it, but that I would be told what to do as much as I was, I guess. And not in a being told what to do, that's fine. I know you're going to have that in a job, yes, but I didn't feel like I had a lot of freedom to do what I wanted to do or thought that the kids needed. And I thought that's what I had in my head. I thought, go into the classroom and it's just going to be fun.
Right. You thought you'd have a lot more autonomy.
Yeah.
And that was not the case. Okay. Looking back now, how well do you feel you were prepared for the job? And what would you change?
Honestly?
Yes. Yes, that's what we're looking for.
Honestly, I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't feel like it prepared me hardly at all for a real job.
Okay. Talk more about that.
And I say that because I feel like in college, it was about writing a lesson plan. And you learn methods, you learn teaching methods and, strategies and whatever, specific things for reading and math and everything. But when you get your own classroom, that all kind of goes out the window because especially your first couple years, you're just feeling it out. And you have 20-something, in my case, I had younger kids, 20-something little kids, and, classroom management. No, I know they do teach you classroom management, but again, it's not the same until you are in a classroom and you are in charge of that classroom. Going and watching somebody for an hour or two at a time just doesn't prepare you for what you're actually going to be doing yourself. And I never felt like I was adequately prepared. But I'm not sure that going to a class and having someone tell you something when you've never experienced it or done it is ever going to be the best way to learn it. I feel like anybody who is capable could go observe a good teacher for maybe a couple weeks straight and be just as good of a teacher.
So it's that it's the long-term observation. That's something you would definitely change.
Yes, absolutely. Anybody that I have talked to that I know is going into education, I will tell them, go follow a teacher around from the time they get there in the morning till the time they leave. Don't go in for an hour
go home
or two.
With them.
Yeah, go home with them. Follow them
the work they're still doing.
Exactly. And, do that even if you can a couple days in a row because you're not getting... I don't think you're getting a realistic view of what it is unless you do that.
Right. Is there anything that stands out in your memory from any of those observations that you feel was really kind of invaluable, that you really are glad that you either got to do this or see this, and you remember taking that into your own teaching?
In my own observations. Oh my goodness, it's been so long ago. I don't remember ever really having a bad experience in observing. But again, I wasn't teaching yet. So I didn't know exactly probably what... I could go into a classroom now and be like, oh, that's awesome. I wish I'd have known about that. That would have helped me. Because, I know where I struggled, So if I would go into a classroom now and see something that worked, I would recognize it. You don't really pick that stuff out because I had never had a classroom at the time when I was still in college. Right. So I'm sure there were better things. I just don't really remember because...
It's almost like trying to learn how to drive by watching somebody else drive.
Yeah, it really truly is.
You can try to remember everything.
Right.
But,
like right now I'm in dental hygiene, and I'm, my second semester in school, we are seeing patients. We're cleaning their teeth. We're not watching videos. We're not being told how to do it. We're doing it. And
so that's made a big impression on you of like, maybe we should have been teaching kids earlier on.
And I mean, we would go do a lesson, but that's not, and being able to teach a lesson effectively obviously is important, but you're going to be with kids all day long, and you're going to have to manage this classroom full of kids all day long, and it's just so different.
Yeah. So, okay, so you get your first job. So you started off as a Title I, which meant you were plugging into different classes, or did you actually have a classroom?
No, I had it was reading, I can't remember, reading mastery. It was pretty easy for me. It was a scripted program. I didn't have to do lesson plans. What
was it called? Do you remember?
Reading mastery.
Reading mastery was the name of the program.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And I would pull kids out of the room, and just a small group of kids, and we just did a reading lesson.
Okay.
Just like of 3 or 4 or 5 kids at a time.
And that was for one semester. And during that semester, were you still thinking, I can't wait to get my own classroom? Were you still sort of hungry for the job?
I thought, once I get my own classroom, because that job, that one, I kind of had mixed feelings. I was away from home, so I wanted to get back home. And I did think it was an easy job, but I didn't know anybody, and I knew that we weren't going to be there, so it was hard to get really into it, I guess, because I knew we would be leaving at the end of the year and going somewhere else. But I did at that point. I kept thinking, once I get my own classroom, I think I'll really like it.
So you were definitely you were already kind of not liking it at that point, but you're thinking it was other external things.
Yes.
And do you think now that probably was the case, that it was not necessarily teaching itself, but...
Yeah. And too, like, you go to school for 4 years, and you want to like it. You want it to... You don't want your time to have been wasted.
Were there some things that happened during that first semester, though, that already were kind of like little red flags that now you're looking back on them, you're thinking, yep.
Yeah, I would say so. The books that I was supposed to be using to teach this, it was a brand new thing. They hired me because it was brand new. They didn't have a reading mastery teacher beforehand because it was new.
Right.
So they hired me to teach it, and they didn't have the books in yet. I started the week the day we came back after Christmas break. I started, and we didn't get the books in until mid-February. So I was having to think up things to do to keep myself looking busy, because I literally would sit in a room with 2 other ladies that were kind of aides and just think, I don't have anything to do. Like, what am I supposed to be doing? I need to be on the computer, that way I look busy.
So did they not assign you to kids?
No. So I finally, I went to the principal and said, can I go ahead and start working with these kids at least? I can pull things off the internet or, resources around here and maybe just kind of get started.
Right.
Because I had no materials for reading first.
So when you first started, they just said to you, we have to wait for the stuff to get here.
Yes. And I'm sitting there getting paid, being there every day while people around me are working hard, and I really felt kind of bad because, I'm almost bored. And I haven't experienced that since then. Yeah. But I don't know, it just... Well,
if you know that there are kids who need extra help and they're not meeting with you at all, so it's kind of a waste of resources.
I don't know. I never quite understood why I was there if I wasn't going to be working with these kids who needed the extra help. Right. Because it was for kids who, didn't have those real great reading skills. Yeah. I was working with the struggling readers.
So the stuff got there in mid-February, and then how did it go from that point?
From that point, a lot of it was, it was new. So here I am, fresh out of college, and, doing this new program that nobody in that building really has a lot of experience with. I think there was one special ed teacher that had worked with it before. She had a few books that she worked with some of her kids, and she was the only person that could even really help me, that knew what we were doing. And it went okay, but it could have gone a lot better had I known what I was doing, and had there been somebody to kind of maybe mentor me.
Right. So that was basically they just gave you the materials.
Yes.
And gave you a list of kids' names.
Yes.
And so...
And I felt very lost.
Right.
Very lost and incompetent. And it probably kind of, you know, my self-confidence probably went down a little bit because I felt, you know, like I'm dumb. I don't know what I'm doing. But why would I? Because nobody's really told me.
Right. And was there... So I'm thinking on the other end of that, too, was there any accountability for you? Was anybody sort of checking to see, where are you guys? How much have you done?
You know, not really. My principal was really, really nice. And, you know, if I would go to her with something, you know, she would do her best to help. But I don't think it was a priority.
So from the outside, it can look like a school is doing a lot to help their struggling readers. But in reality, you could have been doing almost nothing at all with those kids. And nobody really would have known.
No.
Okay. So, I can see how this would already have started you. Yeah. So at the end of that semester, you got a job in what grade?
I was an aide with first and second grade.
Aide with first and second. Mm-hmm. And you did that for 1 or 2 years?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Mm-hmm. So how was that year?
That year was okay. I still, looking back, after having taught after that, I know how time-consuming teaching is, and I could probably handle being an aide now because, well, especially after having been a teacher, because I know kind of what kids need and how to help them more than I did then. But looking back, it was not bad because I had a better schedule. I could leave right after school was over. I didn't have to take things home with me. But again, that job was probably more just me on a personal level. Like, I never felt like I really fit in with anybody. They were very nice to me, but again, I knew I wasn't going to be an aide forever. Because I needed a job. I wanted to get an actual teaching job. Right. So, how long is this going to last? So I won't say that I put a lot into it. Right. So
you put a lot of even personal energy just in getting to know people. And,
right.
Yeah.
And I think that probably would have helped if I would have done that. I think I would have been a little bit happier. But
so at the end of that year, at that point, you still definitely were excited about getting your own classroom and getting a...
I was probably a little less anxious than I had been. I still wasn't completely turned off, but I think, because at this point now, even though I was an aide, I was now in the classroom. Right. And I did see what the other teachers were doing, and I saw how some kids are not easy to work with, and the work that the teachers are doing. And at this point, I did want a certified job rather than certified job rather than a classified job. But I also recognized the work that the teachers were doing and thought, if I could get something that I'm not in the classroom, that would be nice. That I could still, work with kids, but maybe, I don't know how great a classroom is going to be now. I was sort of starting to think that way a little bit.
Okay. That's really interesting. So during that year, you saw some things. So if you can try to go back now and remember, were there certain events or moments that, like, even when you say that, it stands out in your mind, like, I don't think I want that for myself. Like, was this the teacher that you worked with?
It was more about probably just the sort of kids that were at that school, because they were, the lower income, the home life wasn't good, and it was just, I think that was stressful, and that made it really hard for those teachers. That might not be the case in other schools, but for this one in particular, there was a few kids that, literally just would lose it and just lose control in class, scream, fight you and kick you and stuff like that. And that's the sort of thing that went on there. Right. Not all of them, but a few of the kids. That was the sort of thing that you had to work with, and when you're dealing with that, that kid's not interested in math or science at that point, and neither are you, and that makes it hard on you to get to gather yourself even after it's over with and focus on what you got to be doing, and it's it distracts the other kids, and that can be really challenging. And, those particular kids that would happen with, it didn't happen every day, but it did happen. And, they were in a regular classroom, and they didn't have aides. I mean, that kid didn't have an aide.
Right.
I was in there and floating around, but...
Do you think extra people in a school that's got just a more challenging population, just extra adults in the building would help?
Yes.
So that if somebody's getting out of control,
yes,
they could just be removed.
Absolutely. I think that's very necessary.
More bodies.
Especially with the little ones, because it's already hard to control a lot of, small kids at the same time.
Right.
Even if they're well behaved, it still can get rowdy and out of hand. But especially when they're like this and they throw, temper tantrums and, get violent almost. Thank goodness they're small and they can't hurt you.
Right.
But, well, hopefully.
Yeah.
But, I think extra bodies and, just the ratio of kids to adults.
Right. Would help a lot. So that year's over and you finally get your own classroom, which was...
No, not yet.
No?
Still didn't have my own classroom.
No.
Oh, I skipped a year.
Oh.
I forgot. Yeah. In between that year and my first year in the classroom, I was another kind of Title I. I was reading intervention. I forgot about that one. Yes.
Okay, so you did, all right, so you did the reading and then another reading intervention.
Yes.
That was another full year?
Yes.
And then you were an aide for a full year.
I did Title I for a half a year.
Right.
Then I was an aide for a full year.
Got it.
And then the next year I was reading intervention for a full year.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, that one completely slipped my mind.
That's
that was probably my best year too. How did that?
The reading intervention year was your best year? Why was that?
That one was solely because of the school I was at. Like I was at the best school I could have ever been at. Like I don't think I'll ever work for anyone as great as the principal that I had that year. He was just wonderful.
Tell me what was wonderful about him.
He had realistic expectations. He wasn't, I don't know how to say this. He wasn't all about school. You could have a conversation with him that didn't have to do with school. Mm-hmm. And, it was just refreshing to be able to talk to my principal, my boss, and as a real person.
Right.
He'd laugh all the time. He was just, anytime you went in the teacher's lounge at lunchtime, he's in there telling a story about, his grandma or something like that. Mm-hmm. And it was just refreshing. I don't know. But he also really did care about the kids. And he, as laid back as he was, he also... he had expectations, but you didn't want to let him down because he was such a great guy. Mm-hmm. And the environment and the atmosphere of that school, I think, is because of him. And I came into that school not knowing a single person, and I felt at home. Like, I felt like I just felt like I'd always known them. Everybody at that school was just wonderful. And plus, again, I did not have a classroom. Mm-hmm. I was reading intervention, so I was going into classrooms and just I would stay in the classroom and just work with a group of kids. And I was happy that year. Yeah. I liked it. I liked pretty much everything about it. And I left there not because I wanted to. I could have stayed there, but my husband got offered a job somewhere else. Right. So we needed to move, and it would have been an hour drive. So
just professionally, if you could have just stayed with that job, you probably would have just kept doing that.
Probably. There's a good chance I would have,
It sounds like just your colleagues in general, the other teachers and the principal had a lot to do with that.
I would say they did at that school, even, but at that point in my career, I still wasn't completely, turned off by teaching. Mm-hmm. So I think if I, even at a different school, if I, the job itself was, easy, and I didn't have to spend a lot of extra time outside of school. Right. I had time during school to get things done, and I didn't have to stay late. I didn't have to take a lot of stuff home with me.
And what about, so because it sounds like it's very similar to what you were doing in that first position, but this time around, was it the materials? You did? Did you have more mentoring?
Yes, I did. My resource teacher in that school had actually taught reading intervention the year before. Mm-hmm. And now she was in the classroom, and she had done it. She had done what I was doing. So she, could help me much better than my previous experience.
And in the first couple weeks of that job, do you feel like I have this sort of theory about beginning teachers that a lot of them are reluctant to ask questions, and they don't want to look stupid, and they don't know who to ask. They don't want to bother people. And I feel like it takes a more assertive mentor to come to you and say, here's what you need to do.
I think that's very true.
Yeah. Was that second person more like that? They were more...
She was very... She made me feel like I could go to her, if I had questions. Like I, don't feel stupid to ask me a question. She made me feel comfortable, and she definitely did. And again, I think having done my job, she knew what problems I might have, or what just exactly specifically what exactly I needed to do and what to help me with, and whatever. But I felt like I had a ton of help that year,
right?
And just
you said that the principal set realistic expectations too. So explain that a little bit more too.
I just think sometimes principals are just doing their job too, but the people who are giving the principals their orders, sometimes their goals and their agendas are completely unrealistic, because they aren't in the classroom. They are not working with these kids every day, and so they say, this is what the schools need to be producing and doing, and so the principals just pass it down, and they're just doing their job. And I think sometimes without realizing, hey, the kids in this school, maybe need something else, or that's just not going to work, whatever. And he was just realistic. He just was. I can't think of anything specific.
Well, it sounds like, he obviously was getting that message from above him.
Right.
But did he communicate to you all, like, we can't exactly do what they want us to do, so we're going to do this instead? Like,
yeah, kind of. I mean, not that we would just completely,
just drop it.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know. He understood where some of these kids were coming from.
Yeah.
And he genuinely cared about the kids. And I'm not that any other principal I worked for didn't care, but I just think he knew some of these families personally, and was okay with growth and with progress rather than benchmark. And
would he say that to you all as a staff?
Yeah, he would make that very clear that well, this is good. This is better than where they were. So that's something to be proud of. That's a step in the right direction. Whereas other places I was at, it wasn't like that. It's like, well, they're not a benchmark.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, but they've moved up. This number is higher than it used to be.
So that's the next job. That's the place where you finally are in your own classroom.
That's the last couple years. I ran into that a lot.
Yeah. Was this third and second?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And that was all in the same school?
Yes. And I did teach 5th grade at another school in between there. After the year I did intervention, I was 5th grade.
Okay.
And that was probably the
turning point
that I definitely knew, okay, I don't want to be here another second. But again, I think that was having absolutely no help whatsoever. I was thrown into a situation. I had never had a classroom. I was hired to teach Title I again.
Okay.
And the day before school started, they had gotten approval from the superintendent or whatever to hire a third 5th grade teacher, because they only had 2 and they needed a third.
Right.
So she came to me, and rather than going through the interview process, it was more convenient to just put me in 5th grade so that the kids, start the year off rather than...
Oh, because they had already hired you anyway.
Because they had already hired me, right.
Mm-hmm.
So she came to me and she said, would you like to teach 5th grade? And I'm thinking, no, not really. For 2 reasons. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I have 0 time to get ready.
Right.
I've not mentally prepared myself for this.
This is the day before the first day of school.
The day before the first day of school, yes. And it's 5th grade, which I've only worked with primary at this point. So this is completely new world for me.
Yeah.
So, that alone, I'm really scared and nervous and just not thrilled. But, I can't tell my new principal, no, I really don't want to take this job.
Yeah.
So I throw together, as much as I can. And, first day of school can be pretty laid back, so I didn't have to have a ton of stuff done, but there was still a lot that needed to be done.
Yeah.
And so...
How are the other two fifth grade teachers?
The other two fifth grade teachers.
Because I'm thinking that could have made the biggest difference of all.
That is the biggest difference.
Yeah.
They are... I don't want to... I'm not judging them, or... I don't know.
This is just your own experience, though.
As people, they're nice people. They're good people, but... I had no help from them. I had zero help from them. And every day when I left that place, I wanted to cry. When I'm driving in every day, I just wanted to, throw my car off the road and not go in. I dreaded that job more than anything else. And that was mainly why, was because I had no help. And I never felt like not that I didn't know what I was doing, but I wasn't confident in what I was doing yet. I mean, I'm brand new at this. I've never had a classroom.
Well, not to mention you have no time to even get ready.
And I always felt behind. It was like I just never could catch up from that.
Yeah.
And
so at the beginning of the year, though, I mean, did they even sort of make any kind of just formal gesture of hey, if you need anything, ask us?
Yes, they did.
But
honestly,
they didn't really do anything besides that.
And plus, there was I guess, special circumstance there. One of the teachers was about to have a baby in September or October, so she was about to go on maternity leave.
So there's going to be another new person.
So there's going to be another new person, and so that one teacher that was there, she probably did feel kind of overwhelmed. There's no doubt.
Right.
If I put myself in that situation, I can see being overwhelmed and feeling like you're having to carry everything. But I mean, she was only gone, 6 weeks or whatever. It wasn't forever. And I was very willing. I'm the type of person, I'm a yes person. I'm, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And I'm very willing to do whatever I need to do to help somebody else out. And I would tell her that, if I don't want you to feel like you have to do everything.
Yeah.
But, kind of steer me in the right direction, and I'll do whatever I can. And so I heard her make the comment, though, while the other teacher was gone on maternity leave. I heard her say to our principal, and she probably didn't even think about what she said, but she made the comment. She said, she asked her how things were going. She's like, well, it's going good, but it's just so different not having your teaching partner there with you. And because they had taught together the year before.
The lady who went on maternity leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Referring to her. And that just kind of made me feel like I was, I don't know, she was doing things for me and I was a pain. That's how that made me feel.
You weren't pulling your weight somehow.
Yeah. And, she's the one who's done this before. You've taught fifth grade. You've taught for several years. Mm-hmm. I'm new to fifth grade. I'm new to the classroom. I'm new to this school. I'm not saying, do everything for me by any means, but, I'd like a little bit of help. A little bit of guidance and support would be wonderful.
How did you get even information about just curriculum and what you were supposed to be teaching? Did that not come from her, or did that come from...
I think we would meet every week. We'd have our meetings and kind of talk about where we were going the next week, but I still, again, looking back, I never had a full grasp on what exactly probably I needed to be teaching. I mean, I knew that we were covering this in this chapter.
Right.
But writing lesson plans in that school was more important than what you actually did with the lesson plan.
Yeah.
It was that kind of situation. And
these had to be turned in to the principal?
We never once had to turn in a lesson plan all year long. I mean, we did lesson plans, obviously, but and there were some times, there might have been a week where I knew what I was going to do, but I wouldn't really write it down because she didn't require us to turn in lesson plans.
Okay.
So I just kind of have my own little list of things we were doing for the day.
It didn't really resemble the lesson plans you did in college with
not
intros
at all.
And
not whatsoever.
Yeah.
So then, but I would write it down because I need to have a record of what I've done and for just myself, so I know what
to do. Yeah.
Right. And then in January, she says, "Okay, I need you to turn in your lesson plans."
The principal?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Literally, that sounds so made up, and that sounds crazy. I swear. In January, she says, "Turn in your lesson plans by, the end of the week or whatever." And everybody was just like, "What?"
Wow.
What?
From the whole fall.
Yes. For months and months of lesson plans, which again, we had been doing them.
Yeah.
And we did, that was one thing, we did kind of share lesson plans. Like I would do, I think maybe social studies while one of them did reading and one of them did math, and then we kind of combine them. So there was accountability there. So we were keeping up with it, but not detailed lesson plans like you would turn in.
Right.
And so we turned them in, and the principal actually read every single thing because she had marks like she was grading papers.
Wow.
She had marks all over, like red marks and comments, and I felt like I was a student again.
Yeah.
Like I had, I'm turning this into my teacher to be graded, and she hands it back.
Did everybody kind of have that same reaction?
Yes, everybody.
So there was probably a lot of ugly talk going on.
There sure was.
And in terms of the comments, were there any other sort of consequences after that? Was it from now on you have to keep turning these in, or we need to be
I think after that she said I still don't think she collected them every week, but like maybe every month or something like that. It was periodically that she did look at them after that.
Right. So it would be safe to say that incident was another thing that kind of pushed the needle a little further toward...
Yes, because she had negative comments written on there.
Right.
When you've never required us to do this before.
Right.
So how are you going to really sit here and give us, 4 days to get every lesson plan that we've done all year so far, a whole semester's worth of lesson plans, and perfect for you so that you like what they say.
Did you, about the comments too,
and there's no uniform lesson plan that the whole school was doing.
I was going to ask that too.
Nothing
there was
like
no
that.
form that everybody had to use.
No.
So the comments then, was there any value in the comments? Did you?
No.
No? What kinds of things did she write?
I remember her putting frowny faces.
Oh.
And then there was one, I was using the lesson plan format that the other two 5th grade teachers had used in the past. It was not one that I would have ever chosen.
Right.
It was in Excel. The print was really tiny.
Yep.
And it was just not what I would have done.
Uh-huh.
And so when you're going through and doing a lesson for next week, all I was doing was I would use the plan from the previous week and just delete in that box and rewrite what I'm going to do. So apparently in going back and filling in those boxes after we had just handwritten things to turn into her real fast, some things had got copied more than once. Right. And because I remember her writing, this is, on Thursday, this is the same thing you did on Tuesday or whatever. Right. Because apparently I had not, or what you'd done last week.
Right.
Because I didn't go back and delete it and fix it.
Right.
And it's things like that. It's I didn't do that, but...
But if you had known at the beginning of the year and everybody had a standard form and you knew she's going to be periodically taking these and looking at them...
Oh, this is making my blood pressure rise.
I can tell. No, that's okay. But a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was kind of just random.
Yes, and this was her second year as principal. That's another story. This particular principal had never taught in the classroom. She was a PE teacher.
Really?
Yeah. And she actually had another teacher that had been teaching 15 years in that school. Or that taught at this school. A very experienced teacher. Yeah. This teacher has awards sitting in her classroom where she's won awards for, great things that she's done and effective things that she's done with kids. She had to redo an observation with our principal because it just wasn't good enough. Because her room was right next door to mine. And I remember going over there one day and talking to her, and she was in tears because of the negativity that the principal had thrown on her because her lesson was just not very good and she needed to redo it. Yeah. But yet the principal has never even had her own classroom. And she's had much less experience than this teacher. There was just a lot of problems that year. That was just that year did not sit well with me. And overall, I didn't have a problem with her. Yeah. She kind of stayed in the background. Right. But it was one of those situations where you kind of heard things, but I personally never experienced anything with her negative.
Yeah.
Until she fired me, I guess. That didn't sit well with me either, I guess. But yeah, so but
you didn't have any problem with her, but
No.
there was nothing that was ever really good compared to that other guy you had worked for.
She wasn't outwardly, again, I had just come from this school that I loved. I loved everybody there. I had felt, it felt like a family there. And I go to this place and it's cold and nobody knows, nobody talks to other people. And I literally knew the teacher next door to me, like we became friends.
Right.
I actually still keep in touch with her. One of the family resource person, I got to know him well, and a special ed teacher, and that was literally the only friends I felt like I had in that building. I didn't even know other people in the building, whereas the year before, I only worked with kindergarten through 3rd, but I knew everybody.
That makes such a big difference.
And it does. It made a huge difference, and I just never. It was just such a cold place. And even parents who I have since talked to that have kids that go there, they all just say the same thing. And it's not that it's not the teacher's fault, and there's good teachers there, but it's just not a welcoming place at all. And I think that comes from the administration. I think that's where that starts.
Well, except that I agree with you that they can definitely set a tone and do a lot, but if that principal had only been there for 2 years, I'm guessing a lot of the teachers there had been there a longer.
This was a newer school.
Oh, okay.
So, and then maybe that has to do with it too. But
but that could be a blast, though.
It could be. Yeah.
Everybody's got a fresh start.
True. Yeah.
But if the leadership isn't really doing much to get people to know each other,
and there wasn't not at all. Like and that's another thing. At the other school, the principal had everybody at his house before school started. Before school started, we had a just get to know you thing at his house. A Christmas party, many things, little things throughout the year, like showers for teachers, wedding showers, baby showers, whatever.
Yeah, just social things.
Yes,
yeah,
nothing like that here.
And the principal also socialized with people himself, so that set a tone for everybody.
And let me say too, at this school that I was not happy at, the kids were wonderful. Wonderfully behaved, probably the best behaved kids of any of my jobs, and yet that was the most miserable year for me. And I still keep in touch with some of those kids.
This comes down to the culture of the staff and the principal.
Yes.
The not knowing what you were doing and never really feeling like you were caught
confident.
up. So I didn't know you got fired at the end of the year.
I did.
You just got not renewed.
Well, pink slips were being handed out. It was that week, and it was after school. I'd gone to check my email or something. I ran to my desk and I saw that I had an email from her, so I looked at it real quick and she said, "Can you come to my office?" And I was like, okay. I had a good idea of what this was.
Yeah.
And two, I will take responsibility for some, I probably, obviously, didn't put out that I wanted to be there. There's no, I don't really remember, but there's no way that I looked happy. It's hard to fake it sometimes. Yeah. And I probably didn't seem like I was happy there because I wasn't. And most days, I felt like I never had a friend. I never knew what was going on. I just felt lost. I felt so lost that year. But, so anyway, I go to her office and she literally tells me, again, this sounds made up. Just like the lesson plan thing. She says to me, "So, we've decided, you're not going to be hired back next year, and I don't know, just not a good fit." She said, "I don't know" 3 times, and then she told me I wasn't a good fit, and at that point, I didn't care to even have a conversation with her about why. I wish so bad now I would have.
Right.
But I was on the verge of tears. I was mad, and I didn't want to be there anyway, so I was like, good, I don't want to be here again. So I just walked out. I said, okay, and I left. And she pink slipped 3 of us that afternoon told us all the exact same thing.
Just not a good fit.
Not a good fit.
And so to this day, you still really don't know.
No.
And there was nothing in your records, nothing in your observations.
No, she was in my classroom twice to observe me, and I had good observations. Like, nothing, I never had to redo an observation, or, I met all my standards or whatever. And, I wasn't a good fit. I guess that's not something I can really disagree with, but I think you should probably be able to back that up as a principal if you're going to tell somebody that.
So that was it for that school.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
I was done.
So, on to the next.
Yes, on to the next.
And at this point, your mental state, you're getting pretty disenchanted.
I'm ready to do something else. At this point,
with teaching.
It was after that year that I started thinking about dental hygiene.
Okay.
And I applied at the end of that year. Mm-hmm. And didn't get in, but that was the first time I'd applied. Yeah. Right. So I had started already at this point, and I knew I didn't want to do it.
So you knew for sure it was that. So you kept going mostly just because you needed the income. But you were already checked out at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I was checked out. Yeah.
So so you taught for 1 more year or 2 more years after that?
3 more years.
3 more years after that. Okay. Yes. Talk a little bit about those. Okay. About those years.
Those were all in the same school.
Okay.
That first year, I taught 3rd grade, and I was coming in when they were on the tail end of this reading grant that they had had for about 5 years, and it was the last year of this grant, and that was like the biggest thing in the world was this reading grant. And there was a reading coach in the building that she worked with all the primary teachers. She was, she was hardcore. She would come in your classroom and just watch you during reading and make sure that you are doing what you are supposed to be doing. And, this lady scared me, and I didn't think she was very nice. And, I was trying to be as nice to her as possible because I wanted her to like me, but she scared me. If I saw her wandering around the halls, she was one of those people, like, because this, we're getting money for this grant to do this reading program, whatever, 90 minutes of reading. And if you, I heard out of her mouth, if you're starting at 8:01, you're not starting on time. You start at 8 o'clock, and you don't end at 9:29. You end at 9:30. Like, she was that person. Like, she's walking outside of your door to make sure you're starting on time. And so I didn't start off happy there. That was intense, and I'm coming off of this bad job that I hated the year before. I would say the first semester of that year was better than the year before, but I was still...
Why was it better?
Miserable, because it was just not that place.
Right.
I actually did, like, this place, this school was, again, family. You felt everybody was nice. You had support. The teachers were very welcoming, and that just has such an impact. I think it really does. If you don't feel like you belong somewhere, why do you want to be there? And that was the problem with the other place. But here, again, I felt everybody was very nice and helpful, and if I needed something, I could go to them, and they were very willing to help. And they all kind of warned me about this reading coach lady. They're like, she's intense, but just deal with her, whatever. So it kind of got a little better after Christmas. I really don't know why, if she was just kind of chilling out, because she knew that her job as reading coach may not exist the next year because the reading grant's over. So she may have to go back in the classroom. So that year was better. And then the following year, I got moved to 2nd grade, which I was okay with because there's not a testing grade, and that helps a lot. You just have that pressure and stress of, those test scores aren't on you anymore, because in 3rd grade they are, 2nd grade they're not. So this reading coach, she got put in 3rd grade. She had to go to the classroom again because the reading grant was over. And it was just a very interesting year because 2nd grade and 3rd grade did a lot. We did like team planning and stuff together, and she said many times, she's like, I just forgot how bad this was. She's like, y'all have a lot to do. Y'all have, this is a hard job. And she was always honest about reading because that was her job.
Right.
And all of a sudden now she's like, it's hard to get all this other stuff in.
Yeah.
She's like, I realize that now. And she kind of, she didn't necessarily apologize, but I think that was kind of her way of apologizing.
Yeah, right.
Because she
realized and she admitted that, yeah.
But,
nobody really understands that unless they're doing it. And reason I wanted to do this with you is because you said something to me years ago that I never forgot, which was, if they would just let us teach.
Yes.
It would be great.
Yeah.
And so
if you could,
and I just thought that was really so true, and will probably ring true with a lot of people. So explain a little bit about what that actually means, about what all the other things are that they're asking.
Okay. Well, the last year that I taught, the very last year, we did so much. We spent hours and hours after school, of course, because you can't do anything during the day.
Yeah.
If you sit down at your desk, you're doing a bad job. If you sit down, period, you should be up walking the room the entire time. If not, you're a bad teacher. And so everything has to be done outside of school, of course. But we spent so many hours doing things to prove on paper what we were doing in the classroom, basically. And it's like, okay, this is not helping me as a teacher. I don't really think it's helping the kids. It's just more work. We're having to take time out of class time to explain to the kids how this new system is that we're going to start doing of, I remember we were talking a lot about like having, the kids having accountability for what they're learning, and each kid had to have a folder for each subject, and they had to keep their work in the folders, and we had to teach second graders, and the first grade teachers had to do this, and so did the kindergarten teachers, how to even file them, and they had to give themselves a grade, and we would do it, in second grade we don't give letter grades, so it would be, a frowny face, a straight face, or a happy face. How well did you do? And then, we're supposed to conference with these kids and ask them, well, why didn't you give yourself a smiley face? And it's stuff like that. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I cannot do that and do what I'm supposed to do, teach this curriculum in a day. Like, I can't do that. And not to mention, this is a lot of extra work for me. If I had an aide that could do this for me, and, when the kids got done with their work and they went and filed it and they could go do it, that's great. If I had somebody else that can help me with that.
It's not so much the idea of it, but it has to take the place.
There are many good ideas that, we were doing. There was nothing wrong necessarily with anything, but it's just you're incorporating something else. There was always something else that they were throwing at us and saying, well, this is great. This is what we have to start doing, because if we do this, then it's going to solve all our problems.
But that would be added to
on top of
12 other things that had already been newer.
Yes. Another thing that drove me crazy, and this goes back to the reading first thing, or the reading program that they were doing when I was teaching third grade. It was the best thing ever. The best thing ever. But once the grant ran out and they weren't getting funded for that, we did something else, and all of a sudden, this is the best thing ever. Something else new. Yes. You didn't go back to something you did before. No. Okay. And it seemed like literally every year there is some new book or some new study or some new person that's got something new, and it's just great. And it probably is great. And in the last year I taught, we had a guy who is well known for his ideas. He came and spoke to us. He spoke to the whole county, and he was awesome. I could have listened to him talk all day long. He was great, and he had some wonderful ideas. And that's what we were going to start doing, was everything he had Tonetti. Our lesson plans are based on Johnny Tonetti's ideas and his theories and his whatever. And we had to have in every lesson that we did one of his things, one of his ideas. Right. And it had to be identified too. You had to flag it somehow, and yes, and then which was fine. He had a lot of great ideas. And then the next year, because I still have friends that teach at this school, they're doing something different.
That Antonetti's not even
it's
on the radar.
The leader in me
now
is the new thing now, and that's what everybody's doing. And I hear that's great, but that's fine. Just stick with something, because you're having to relearn something every year. And it's like everything that I did this past year, I could reuse some of this stuff, and I could. And
it costs so much money.
I know that it's making it sound like, oh, it's all about me. No, because everything is good. All these ideas are great, and they're benefiting the kids. If they're benefiting the kids, why are we changing it?
Right.
Like, if it's not benefiting the kids, then that's fine.
I remember you saying you never felt like you got the opportunity to get good at anything.
I never did.
Because you couldn't stick with it long enough to get good at it.
Yes.
Which is probably why, a school may not get the results from it that it's looking for if you only do it for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
And say, oh, that's not working.
A huge problem.
Yeah.
That, and I could get put in 4th grade or 5th grade the next year.
Yeah.
And, then everything that I've learned and I've spent my time getting better at, now that's kind of out the door now, and I've got to start working on this.
If that could be changed, if I'm a superintendent, and I'm getting a lot of information at conferences about this new approach or this new approach, what would be a better way to introduce this to my staff without it being one more thing we have to do?
I have no problem being, attending PDs. It sometimes does get old, I guess, because you feel like you go to, we do go to so many. I mean, 24 hours every year is a lot. Mm-hmm. And I do think that a good number of the ones that I attended personally were a complete waste of time, and it was just a PD because we had to have PD hours. There were some that were useful, and that's fine, but I don't... To require it, to introduce us to these new ideas, and say, hey, this is another resource for you that's out there. This is something good. If you want to use it, we think it's great, but don't require something new every year.
Well, that's the thing, like with the Antonetti, to have some Antonetti aspect in every single lesson. I'm thinking if a principal were to say, I would like you to try to show me in 3 lessons this semester how you've used
every lesson.
How would you have responded to some saying, see if you can work this in 3 times this year, and just mark that lesson plan as Antonetti that you've done it? Would that have been something you would have been more open to?
Yeah.
Because then you can pick where it's going to work the best. And
because I feel like when you say that, when you when you're told that you have to do something that's extra almost, then you start building your lesson around that rather than focusing on the goal of the lesson in the first place,
and choosing something that's going to really be the best.
And it's like, well, how can I change this lesson so that I can fit this activity in, or whatever, or this strategy or whatever. And I feel like then I've lost the purpose of it in the first place. Right. And I'm not saying that they were bad, or that nothing that John Antonetti shared with us was bad or anything, but it's a challenge to do that every single time.
With every single thing. And it kind of disregards every other theorist and method, all the other methodologies out there, and
yet they'll tell you, the Marzano strategies are still good, and whatever, but yet, and they're not discouraging you from using those, but it's like,
it's just another thing. Yeah. Well, and it also sort of sounds like you, and I know a lot of teachers felt this way too, depending on how the principal presents it. If it's you're going to do this, then your own professional capability isn't really being respected.
Yeah.
You're not being respected as if you know what's best.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I know these kids better than anybody else in this building does, because I'm with them day in and day out, all day long. Right. But yet somebody that, either the principal or somebody above the principal who's never met these kids is telling me what's best for them. Yeah. And it might be, but it might not be. Right. And if it's not, I shouldn't have to do that if that's not what's going to work with them. And that's what's frustrating, because teaching is it's the type of job I think you should want to do it. You shouldn't go into a classroom full of kids feeling the way that I have felt in the past. So
if you were to, if someone listening to this is a principal or a future principal, what would you like them to know about retaining and nurturing good teachers? What should they be doing differently?
Well, I think it's important to, first of all, just remember what it was like when they were teaching, because I think a lot of the higher ups kind of forget about that. And, if the ones who have been in the classroom, they have forgotten. They become so just focused on, on their job that they forget that it's about the kids sometimes. And because that's what bothered me a lot, was it was like, this isn't about kids. This is about, our school has to, we want to make our school look good. Or, the money, if we don't do this, we don't get this money for whatever. And I just feel like it was...
Should they spend more time in the classroom? Would that help them remember?
Probably.
Maybe.
I had, like I said, the last school that I worked at, I liked that school, and I liked my principal, and she was, I don't feel like she was out of touch with teachers. I think some do get out of touch, but she did. She was in the classroom a lot, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think you should be.
Right.
As a principal, you should know what's going on in the classrooms, and if you're gonna hire and fire teachers and make decisions for the kids in your school, then you should be in the classroom knowing what's going on.
I think I heard about a program or something that some principals have done in the past where they have to shadow a student for a full day.
Really?
And it really gives them a different perspective if they just follow one kid around through the whole day. They start to understand what it's like for them and what things the school is lacking.
Because even as a teacher, you sometimes forget what it's like for the students, and you've got to, kind of go back and be like, okay, maybe I'm being too hard on them, or, they're just 7, and I need to ease up a little bit.
It's hard to remember what it's like to be 7.
Right, it is. So, I think that happens to teachers just like it can happen to a principal. But, just my principal that I had, my last principal, she knew where I was coming from at the job, the 5th grade position that I had that I didn't like. I had talked to her about that, and so she, understood where I was coming from, and she was, I just felt like from day one she was very supportive, and, she didn't want me to have that experience. And,
when you say she was supportive and you felt that she was supportive, what did that actually look like? I mean, I think sometimes there are principals who think that they are supportive, maybe because they say things.
She would not just go on what somebody else says. She would come and talk to you if there was a problem. That did happen with me, actually. My first year at that school, my principal came to me and she said, I have heard that you hate it here. And I was like, whoa. And I honestly never once said that I hated it there. I probably said I hate teaching. I may have used those words. And I was careful who I talked to. And there was like 4 people in the building that I thought I could trust, and that I had mentioned applying to the dental hygiene program. But she came to me and she said that she heard I hated it and that I had applied to the dental hygiene program. And I was like, well, that part is true. And I talked to her about it, and she listened. And I told her, I said, I do not hate it here at all. And, if I don't know who said that, and she didn't tell me who said it, but I said, that's absolutely not the truth. And I may have said I don't like teaching and I don't want to teach anymore, and I may have been angry saying that. I don't know. I really don't know, but I don't hate it here. But at the same time, I had a bad experience last year. I've applied to the dental hygiene program. I don't even know if I'm going to get in. It's just an idea right now. So to me, she had a good reason to pink slip me that year. Of all years, I think that probably would have been a good reason, I guess, just because she knew I didn't see myself teaching for a long time. And she didn't, no. If anything, she probably pushed me to, I don't know, try a little bit harder. Just because I felt like and that made a big impact on me when she could have taken that situation and said, well, I don't want her around if this is what's gonna, she's gonna bring. I don't want that. But she didn't, and she gave me another chance. she put me on committees. She made me kind of the head of my second year there. I was, of the 4 teachers that we all did team planning with, I was the one that had been there the longest, believe it or not. So, she's putting me in charge of stuff, and I don't know, I think she just really...
How did that feel to have her put you in charge of stuff?
It made me feel good, because she trusted me. And again, with what she knew about how I felt about, the job, she didn't have to do that at all.
Right.
But she did, and it made me feel more competent.
Yeah.
Even though I maybe didn't know exactly what I needed to be doing all the time, I just felt a little bit more confident in myself, and thought, well, she's put me in charge of this, so I got to step it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And
it almost sounds like if you had started at that school in that position with that teacher or that principal.
Believe that, yeah.
You might have stuck with it.
I may have felt differently about it.
Yeah.
I just had a lot of bad experiences at the beginning. And, some people I think are just born to teach, and they just love it.
Yeah.
They just absolutely love it. And, it doesn't really matter all the things that I've said that I don't like about it, like all the changes and stuff like that. They just see that as an opportunity and probably just embrace it and say, oh, give me more. But I wasn't really like that. But I do think had I been there and just viewed things a little differently, I may have stuck it out a little longer.
Right.
So.
Okay, so if somebody is thinking about going into teaching, what would you tell them? Another thing I was thinking of is, are there certain types of people and types of personalities that it would be a better fit? What would you like them to know?
I would say, when I first started way back in college, I had to go observe a teacher for a couple hours as a requirement. I chose to go to my elementary school where I went and observed my favorite teacher that I had growing up, because she was still teaching, and I loved every minute of it because it brought back all these memories, and she's so sweet, and I got to be in there and play with these kids, basically, not play, but I wasn't doing anything. I was just kind of helping them with whatever they were doing, so it was fun. And I would say, don't do that. Go to a teacher, and it maybe more than one different type of school. Go to a school where maybe academics are high, and then go to one where it's not. Go to one where there's a little bit more of a challenge.
Right.
And follow that teacher around. Be their shadow for as long as you can. Not for an hour or two on Monday and Wednesday.
Right.
Go from the time that teacher gets there till the time they leave, and just really take in what they're doing. And if you can do that for more than one day, that would be wonderful, because I don't think you understand everything that a teacher does until you are just in their shoes. And that's the closest you can come to being in their shoes until you are a teacher yourself.
Yeah. Do you think that teachers that we all have sort of the ability to someday improve the conditions of our jobs so that it can be better for us?
I think we have the ability. I think a lot of times we just sit by and just do what we're told. That's kind of what I've seen. I feel like when something new comes around and it's something that not everybody's on board with, it's like you just sit around and talk about it amongst each other,
grumble
and just complain, rather than taking it to the state level or whatever, and saying, why are we doing this,
or even to the principal,
or even to the principal. We just sit around and complain and just take it. And I don't know, I guess teachers are rule followers, and they just want to
Well, I do think that a big key to it, though, is the fact that a lot of what you've said is that this stuff is good. It's not that we're against the stuff itself. These are good ideas. It's got more to do with just mastery and,
I'll never forget at orientation, new teacher orientation for one of my jobs, the superintendent came out and talked to us for a few minutes, and he said, you all have all this technology and all these resources. When I first started teaching, they put me in a classroom with textbooks and said, here you go, teach this. And I remember thinking, please please put me in that situation. Like, that sounds to me like that. Now, that might be kind of extreme, but I feel like I was on the opposite end of extreme too.
Yeah.
Like,
that's funny. You didn't know what to do at the beginning. You had
but just saying, here, teach this textbook, and I'm not saying that you should just teach from a textbook. Mm-hmm. That's not the point I'm making. But to just be put in the classroom and say, okay, this is what you're supposed to teach.
Right.
Here's your book.
Right.
Here's your kids.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you teach them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. That's so much more simple than everything else I've ever experienced.
I'm getting overwhelmed just thinking about it.
Yeah. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that enough.
And I think really the resource we need more than anything is just some time.
Mm-hmm.
Just time.
Oh my goodness. I've said, me and my husband talk about this all the time. It would be wonderful for either, and I mean, this is, I'm sure never going to happen, but in my fantasy world of teaching, I guess, if I could change something, I would love either a day a week, like one day a week, or one day every 2 weeks,
mm-hmm.
or maybe the kids leave, in my opinion, elementary school, not hardly anything gets accomplished after lunch. You
mm-hmm.
lose them after lunch,
mm-hmm.
and that time is usually filled with recess, specials, art, the things that aren't tested.
Right.
Like, that's what we do. I feel like we're babysitting after lunch.
Yeah.
We do math and reading in the morning, and, hit that important, quote, important stuff.
Right.
And if we had afternoons, if the kids went home a little bit early on certain days, and we could just use that time in our classroom, that would be amazing. But even the days that, the in-service days or whatever, you have meetings.
Right. They don't let you be alone and get some stuff done. Yeah.
Make me come here. That's fine. I'll be here all day on the day the kids aren't here.
Yeah.
But let me use that time. Like, I need time to get things together.
Yes.
To just work in my classroom and get things graded, prepare for lessons for the week. Something like that.
It's funny because the job when you were the reading interventionist, the year that you moved around and pulled kids,
mm-hmm.
but when you knew what you were doing that 1 year, the way you described that position is great because you knew what you're doing. You had sort of a limited set of materials to use, and you taught the kids, but you had time during the day mm-hmm. to process it and do the paperwork and do whatever and plan. A lot of it didn't have to come home because
mm-hmm.
you just weren't. You had because I think the thing that nobody seems to realize is that a small percent of a teacher's job is actually working with the kids.
Yes,
there's a lot of other things you need to do, but that's not built into the workday.
Which is probably why the kids don't affect how I feel about it. Like, I'm not, the first thing people say to me when I tell them I used to teach, but I just don't want to do it anymore. Oh, it's because of the kids. Yeah. No. Oh, it's because of the parents. No. No.
It's interesting.
Never has it been about the kids or the parents. I mean, I'm not saying every situation has been perfect, but no. As in general, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
And teaching should be a job that you enjoy. Like, I feel, again, thinking about when I was in school and, I don't know, just how I viewed school then, mm-hmm. it was just so simple. It seemed so simple. And, you come in, your teacher comes in, you just have this nice little world in your little classroom and you just do your thing. And, that's kind of how I pictured it. And it's nothing like that. It's nothing like that. And you don't know that until you're there doing it. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anything else you would want to add?
I feel like I've ranted about everything.
Ranting is good. Ranting is good. Thank you so much for...
You're welcome. Thank you for letting me get it all out, I guess.
Thanks so much to Carrie for your time and your honesty. For those of you listening, please visit www.cultofpedagogy.com to find more great stuff for teacher nerds. Thanks and have a great day.